Coming in high position of track lines, suspensions of disbelief. Disbelief lines are locations of belief line cycle. Calculates, modifies how we track our communication setting to moon. The operation serves location setting sets all communication in kaleidoscopes. Now, a kaleidoscope is basically on a looking glass, trying to establish this location to a setting through camera ops, camera divisions, camera streams, and line rotation center attraction. So, how we see and how we formulate and how we calculate, modify, and see ourselves inside location. Okay? This is about understanding you through modifications. To understand you in all ways and forms, how you work inside. It's the basic understanding is to listen. Just listen. Don't title, don't label, don't do anything like it. Just listen. Don't even have to listen to what you want specifically. Just listen. That's one track location. See, the activation stream gives you instructions through your body for the first time. And everything inside you helps you out. It's an instruction manual to understand how to use it. You get in all setting locations to do your settings, and you get position track lines to your inner child. Your inner child helps you out in all ways and forms and provision, right? But the cycles of communication setting to all calculation is its telepathy. Telepathy of telekinesis is the only way you can connect to all set location line settings and attractions, especially when you understand that your universe only works in frequency, energy, vibrations, and harmonics. It doesn't speak English, guys. It doesn't understand its English. It only understands its source, which is frequency. Frequency of this, frequency of that, frequency here, frequency there. Energy here, energy there. Energy everywhere. Vibration here, vibration there. Harmonics in all position locations. 4 track lines by line division. 6 in correlation, 7 and 2 track lines. Bodies of water. So understanding the process position track lines, creating this space line is creating line communication modifications. Right? Comes in all calculation in your settings. Getting into sectors, vectors, and quads gets you in your command centers and track location, your body frames, and position location of its operation. Knowing exactly why you are connected to everything inside and not outside. Outside doesn't have any resolution line type setting. I'm talking about outside position location of the mind. If the mind loses the process, it's out through calculation setting. That's an outcast. That's out division. Okay. So in position locations, you have to understand how to use the inner cycles, the inner system to its location. Understand you through adaptation, the inner sync, the inner value, the inner volume, the inner mass, velocity, or acceleration. So in calculation of the kaleidoscope line screens, position your moon lines is tracking its position of its kaleidoscope. Each kaleidoscope height calculates its high set location as pixel stream. Think of high calculation of your T receptors of lacing lines of communications coming back into vision. Now the center calculation line interference sets position of track lines. Now in that division line interference, it's understanding the clocking calculations of time, back forcings of time, force recognition of time sequence. Putting your position location, your track lines in division. Now your moon is center line calculation line setting. It's going to be constantly marking. Okay. Setting track lines high center interference interacting with communication setting. 3 months in line communication Earth, 3 million track lines, and 3 billion cycles high calculation setting, heart, mind, and soul. The track to its communication setting and in position location is going to go through unification setting locations to operation. Directing lines and position track lines. Now the track location setting is 1929. Track location, 1 line is the highest center interference and position of travels. Directing lines of communication setting. Now the open signal is the high communication setting, puts you all calculations in position track lines of 1900. Track to its communications, energy wash. Now this is a division line rotation center to its position to its operation. Directing lines of communications. 1 line centers, 9 line set location rotations, 2 operations. Directing lines of communication of panels through all calculations compute system location of your moons. Directing lines of communication setting opens all levels of you and high calculations. Okay. Setting track lines, high position to its operation service. Okay. So how's everybody doing today? Everybody getting ready for Christmas, getting the gifts going, seeing the family, the traditions, the meals. Christmas is all about togetherness, happiness. It's about understanding to use it as a provision cycle, to use it as a connections to a gathering. Yeah, it's amazing when it comes in track locations, right? But see, the thing is, in motivation line screens and all calculation in your system, positive line connections, it's all levels. Christmas is every day. You just don't see it through the mindset location. Abundance and manifestation comes in all ways and forms and how you see yourself. You become yourself in all ways in that calculation setting of screens. Directing lines of communication setting to all calculations, how you see yourself through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Directing lines of communication setting. Remember, you get into correlations of panels and you get direct locations to numbers, how it comes into its own dimensional solar sail. Without that, you can't correlate your travel communication setting to position of the sun and the moon. It won't understand that track through its communication setting, but it's in its own operation system to its own intelligence locations, right? All right. So how's everybody doing so far? Yeah, Nikki connections on McCall line centers, high position locations, all level settings, high calculation interference, Ziggy informations, Janelle. Great to see everybody coming to all information line screens, high positions, operations surface. All calculated and modified. Hey, Angel, how's it going? Setting direct signal line interference and tractors communication surface is triangulation and reset position programs. Okay. So we all understand how to modify our settings and position location cell modifications. Cell generation screens is really understanding what's happening with our body. Our body is going through fractals over pi, direct calculation line settings. High calculation line settings and unification setting attractions. So inline rotation, it's really interesting locations. Tractors communication, directing lines. Let's go in center position to operation surface. Triangulates high position programs. Directs communications, program settings, all calculation modified. Unification, right? Sets lines calculation of point systems, travels, direct signals and set location. Correlate line centers, line streams, 3 set location of travel settings, past, present, and future line connection. Okay. Direct lines of forms, direct lines of present, and triangulation of past. Past comes into future adaptation center. Sets travel communication center, point system, center calculations. Now, in direct signals, this is where it gets interesting too, because you have to understand how the sun modifies the form communication setting in constitute levels. It comes in a kaleidoscope communication center and travel communication setting to its operation surface. So in that track location to its measure. All right, so that correlates the panels, center lines its communication system, opens all levels of traction, and traction calculates and modifies. All right, so direct signals comes into panels of 3 set location setting, right? Walks the high calculation setting of graphs, right? Tracks its communication comes out of the equation from an XT1000 line stream. Now, direct line centers, we have platitude line and a low gravity line screen, set position track calculations, box line centers into 4 line waves and track location high setting. Done by equation. Okay. So remember, we went into the metric screen settings and travel positions, all levels of operation surface and triangulation to reset position programs, allocate to time sequence. Set lines of calculation high interference of 012 line settings is set location of 024 and set location of 0144. Track line conditions set high position locations operation certification. Getting direct signals into line conditions. Point system of track. Now, setting time indication lines of 2, single line rotation, 0 calculation setting. Puts position lines of 2, line position location of 4 sets. Line connection high centers of 2024 set location. Okay, so setting anomalies at switch line centers is all I understand the graphical screen lines. 1, 2, 3 platforms of communication, right? Comes in 2024. Now, 2024 tracks the line position of its kaleidoscopes. 4 track location and measure. Sets position of the sun, correlates the high calculation string lines, opens all signals and modification signing, high centers, line positions, capsule, and communication. Now, this puts a direct signal. Platitudes line calculation setting and travel. Direct lines calculates high interference, changes all communication setting in position locations and bounds of communication, 3 line cycles and set location. Direct line calculation centers, platform and communication center in position of balance. Finding the kaleidoscope line centers, high position astral projections, and set location and travel settings to all operation. Done by equation. All right, so we have to really understand the conditions of the eyes, how its surface location setting, product line rotation, and 2 tracks. Okay, setting direct line centers at the sun and the moon, open sequence panels and communications, all levels of forcing calculation. Directing lines of sails, crosses lines into moon. See the moon line? Sets lines a new graph line rotation in position of travel calculation of point systems. Now, in that point systems, we split the anomalies into 3 track line connections in the moon setting. It opens all panels in position location of track location. Direct line communications comes into its yin and yang. Process calculating line centers of north lines east, north lines of south in track locations. Setting position locations into Y line centers and position locations into flux capacitor. Flux capacitor opens all track lines into triangulation, reset position programs in 3 communication centers adaptation. Very complicated stuff, right? So this formulates U in traction. Okay, this is formulations of U in traction. Okay, you see what's going on? All right, so the center calculation lines opens all 3 cycles, sets position of track lines in 3 lines of point systems in track location. Okay, now the point division line centers opens all calculating line setting, a pi recognition, sets lines of phase recognition of time sequence in portals of communication. Intelligence formation line centers of future line condition all times a capacitor. Intelligence. Done by equation. All right, so center lines of communication is really understand how to use angle points. This is elongated line screens and direct signal to position location in the center. The operation line center high position operation system location has 1 graph lines of 45-degree angles. Indirect signals, the 45% lines, set location, line center location, triangulation, reset position locations. That is percentage in high positions alls. This sets up a program location to its compute system and travel. Now, direct lines of 4, lines of 5, sets line connections. Equal line communication is no longer separated, so we split the lines of communication across the stream. Direct lines communication center comes in position locations, all levels of channel. That sets lines of communication line centers. If you look really, really close, you can see the moon surfacing in track location. Moon sets line calculations, 1, 2, 3, 4 set line connections, right? Traveling of time sequence graph lines sets up 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and 1 track location. Direct calculation line centers in position of 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1 line rotation center. Sets location line interference of 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and track location high setting. Track high center interference of 3, 3, 3, sets line condition of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and track line conditions. Setting line graphical line position locations of pi, direction of time sequence. Matrix correlation high in streams and high track lines, high center interference in position to its operation. Center lines is communication setting to open sequence of open panels of communication. Directing lines communication line interference. XT1000 comes out in streamline in direct signal. On a pi high center interference, a pi a calculation streamline. Splits anomalies in 3 centers of calculations into 4, into 5, into 6, into 7, and 8 lines of communication. Track to its calculation line centers, all levels at high position. Done by equation. All right, so center calculation streamlines. You all understand how to use the number sequence of communications. 1 line signature, 2 track lines, 3 lines, 4 line rotation, set position 6, 6 lines of 7, cross line streams, direct lines 45-degree angle, center calculation of 0 line rotation, center position of its planetary center, high position its calculation stream locations, allocated time sequence, and all 4 line rotation. Directing lines of communication lines is a 4 graph calculation screen. Directs lines of communications, all right? So in that track lines high center interference, we set up the open sequence panels of communication. Line signals across lines. Directing lines of 1 in position of 2, in position of 3, in track location of 4, in position of 5, in set location. Now, directing lines and calculation anomalies splits lines, travel position, travel calculation lines and streams. Directs communication lines of 0 calculations into 0 calculation line setting in position location to its operation surface and track location. Calculation lines into high position locations, crosses line settings. Opens all sequence and crop circle set location. Look at that. It disappeared. It went too fast. Okay? So in track location high lines, 2 lines of platforms, 3 lines of division, 4 lines of sector, 5 lines of pi, and direct signal in the opposite system of correlations of panels. Direct by location center attraction, done by equation. All right. So getting ready in position of track line is really understand how to open up that kaleidoscope communication to the moon. Moon surface its location setting and graph calculations, right? Directing lines of 1, 2, in position of 3, 4 set location setting attractions. 5 lines of positions of center, center line, communication line, system travel calculations. Now, directing line signals, triangulate line rotation, and center communications. Opens all communications centered to the sun on position of travel. Now, directing line calculation crosses stream in position locations. The center lines of communications of pi in line rotation. Now, directing line signals, x2000 comes in position of center. Directs lines calculation, line crosses stream location of center position. Sets lines of communication into center calculations. Directs lines of communication across the line in half line rotation. Calculating high interference, location grid, and a triangulation reset position of programs in center positions, calculation line setting into 3 waving line rotations by calculation stream locations and 3 calculation lines of location grid and center communication setting of its operation surface and track location. Done by equation. Okay. The biometric meters and biosurface and triangulation and reset position of programs are now in position travel lines. Directing lines of communication setting opens all signals. Now, this puts position location near 12 stargates and line positions of back force. Vacuum force lines in the moon line rotation surface tracks its communication setting to an open panel of stargates provision to set location of center. Direct calculation lines into a 3 Fibonacci line swirl and track locations. High generation screens and set position as operation. Triangulation reset position of programs. Okay, directing calculations. X2000 comes in and position travel lines. Scans position location 1, 2, and 3 centers. Okay, opens all signals, opens all panels, opens all communication setting, and track to its communication surface and track location. Now, directing communication lines and it comes to an energetic dome screen. Location grid of center position to its operation surface and track location. Directing lines of an X2000 comes out high calculations. When sectors over pi, direct line calculation setting, ground lines of 2 travels in position to its operation. Directing lines of communication line centers is finding the balance in kaleidoscope communication to its moon and center position location to its atom line, rotation center of its molecule structure of its design, factors over pi, factors over division, factors over sectors, vectors, and quads, vast volume and calculation acceleration of Mach line centers and track location. Done by equation. All right. Setting symbols and track location line center is really understand how to get into modification to your system location of centers and travels. Getting direct signals to understand how to use your system set location to your moon. Moon tracks line calculates line interference. Okay, so we're in a 3-track line conditions high centers. And set location 3, 3, 3. Heart direction of time sequence, 3 lines position the panels in balance, and 3 crosses line set locations of its formation line screen and set location. Direct lines of forms, direct lines of the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon waits on signal, okay, in barometer check lines, sets line cross line streams in high position to its operation. Crosses line settings, opens all signals. Setting travels, communication, setting position, open sequence. Setting line communications, crosses lines of 3 in position location setting, in flux capacitor and ground lines of operation surface and track location. Now, directing lines of communication lines of 3, 3, 3, panels in communication setting. Opens up the right, opens up the left, and center position to its operation surface, sets coordinates and high position travels of operation locations. Done by equation. Okay. Metric meters and scales and line position of travel lines. Directing lines in position to your operation surface is re-angling point set locations. Molecule structures are designed in 3 lines, 1, 2, 3 set locations. Travel lines, high calculation lines, in position of travel calculations, and direct signal. Direct calculations of 4 panels, in direct signals at set location of travel lines. See? Star direction of time sequence. So, and know exactly how to say these things without understanding these things is everything. There's equation of mass. Mass of nothing is all calculations modified set location of setting symbols. Saying track lines of Fibonacci line swirls, directs lines of communication setting in a 3-track location and high position to its operation. Now, directing communication lines of the sun sets sun's communication setting and program set position of its operation. Directing line communication setting through its kaleidoscope. See the kaleidoscope communication? Calculation modify high calculation line strings. Sets location in position location to its solar sail. Track lines calculation to 0 in position to its operation surface and track location. Now, directing communication lines of panels sets position 1, 2, 3 set location line settings. Traverse times of 1, 2, 3, 4 set location of setting locations. Energetic roams, line center calculation high center interference, in position of track lines. Setting track to its communication setting on waving cycles of 0, 24, a track location measure in position of scales and balanced position of travel calculations of high calculation. Done by equation. All right. So we all understand how the center calculation comes into formation. Directing lines of communication setting is all levels of how you see yourself in signals. Setting line communication lines of 024 sets the location of 012. Now the kaleidoscope line position of the travel calculation line system allocates position of time of sequence. See? Time of sequence. Okay? So inline communication, it's like looking at a lamp, but you're actually seeing the inside communication to its kaleidoscope lines of box lines, the three set location of travel lines, and the dimensional rails and communication setting to energetic patterns and the high position location to an energetic dome sets communication of plasma seals. Directing lines of energetic cells and set position to its operation surface and applications. Okay? Now, directing signals of panels, the position of track lines of the moon center lines its communication to its kaleidoscope. This sets position of track lines to its information. Now, the fly direction of time sequence has the three communication of panels, direct lines of 4 and position of 5 in line connections. Crosses line signals in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set provision. Okay? Now, directing line communication line centers comes into the sun, but only sets one traction and one line division. That division line opens up the point system travel calculation lines at 3 lines of pi and position of track lines into its positions of operation. Directing lines of communication line crosses line springs. Directing line can position your centers in communication. Okay. Directing lines of communication, it gets a lot more complicated now because the XC1000 are forcing line triangulation, high position of errors, and triangulation reset position programs in 3 lines of communication setting. I'll calculate and modify in your kaleidoscope of communication. That's it. There it is again. But it's on the opposite line, triangulation, high position, program location setting to track to its communication to its moon. Moon is surfacing backwards, forwards, line calculation, acceleration of Mach lines. Setting track lines and high center interference, high position locations. 6 million lines with centers in position of one cell, modification one cycle, one position of traction lines, and calculation modification center and track location of measures of correlation. All right. So we're all confused now, aren't we? So as I already said, energetic line springs. So what the moon is doing, it's reshaping its anomaly to everything of structure of its design back to 0. So the modification line interference has structure of its own design calculation to its own GOD. The moon surface its position to its angle points, sets calculation line interference, that sets lines of communication in your cells, and modification string lines and high position of travel lines in seconds, minutes, and hours. The travel to its communication setting opens all signals and positions modification. Channel to communication open all signals, and the T receptors, a 4 set line calculation setting of streams, and track location line position locations, a 3 set location. Now, direct lines communication line centers comes into the sun. Sun sets position location of the moon, all levels of operation, surface, and travel. Direct calculation line interference. So in track to its communication setting, XC1000 comes out in provision. Direct calculation line centers, XC1000 comes out in provision. Direct calculation lines, pi direction of time sequence, opens all communications. Splits anomalies of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 set location of travel. Direct calculation of 6 in position of 7 and track locations of 8 in position to its calculation. Energetic dome screens, pyramid streamlines calculation of high centers and travel. Directing line communication. So center communication opens all communication line centers to center. Okay. Now this platforms its communication of 3 centers of waved lines of rotation surface. Triangulation and reset position of programs. Allocates position of time centers. Now, the time center opens up all communication of panels. This positions all levels in track locations. So let me say this again. Your moon is going into its transformation lines, backwards line connection of its structure, of its design, of its GOD. The modification line centers to each pixel frame and set location of T receptor line setting is the lacing line divisions back to 0 of calculation. Direct lines of communication line centers the 2 track lines, operation surface, and 1 platform of communication. Okay, done by equation. All right, so it's very complicated what I'm doing in track line connections, but you have to truly understand how to use the kaleidoscope communication string lines into moon a track location. Okay, very powerful stuff. All right, so that's what's happening with your moon lines. It's going through an acceleration of Mach lines. It's changing the calculation at all levels. Pixel streams, box line rotation centers. Graphic calculation of 45 line setting, high position of travel. Position across line settings, timestamps, high position of travel communications. Setting waveline cycles, high travel communication. Now, indirect signals, center lines of communication is fly direction of time. Okay. So it sets up platforms and 3 set location of travel, sets position of 4 and 5 set location of waiting cycles, sets communication alpha line, got a delta communication and position location high centers, travel represent time sequence, opens a calculation modification secure line defense lines in position to its operational line condition of face recognition. That my equation. All right. So setting alpha tones is direct location setting attractions. So in infusion lines, we have box line circle. Now the box line circle has point systems of attraction. Direct lines calculation crosses line string. Direct calculation line interference into an energetic dome screen. Sets location of grids. Crosses only on 2 track locations. Now in direct signal crosses over in 3 track line centers. In track location into position location of 4 tracks. Some high position location into 5 track provision and set location. Now, directing line calculating line interference, we downshift the cross line string in position to all calculation. Direct calculating line centers crosses line settings, all levels of operation surface and track locations. Directing kill communication centers and I calculating line interference into Stargate line rotation. Directing lines communication of 1 center and track locations. Directing communication lines of center and position locations because you're working with a bi-connector line centers. Triangulation and reset position of 4 and 5 set location of center is a circle location. Now, the center position of the sun sets line communication. Moon sets the tone and sets lines of kaleidoscope communications of high calculation line centers and measure in position of traction and set location. Done by equation. All right. Center communication line settings of screens is the visual location to its high calculation setting. So this comes in the global line interference and direct say location interdimensional line screens in 1 set position of travel. Travel communication lines crosses lines of 2 and position location of 4 and track lines of provision. Direct line calculating setting. So that's 4 over lines of 2, 2 lines equals lines of 6. That's 7 in provision. Sets travel calculation as 7 line and 7 in position travel. Sets position travel, travel, travel. Bracket communication, 4 generation screens. Sets position travel lines, 2 position, 3 positions, 4 positions, 5 positions, 6 positions, 7 positions more. Sets calculation high centers and travel calculation. Direct lines of center and position location sun and the moon and travel communication setting to an open panel of communication surface and track location. That my equation. All right. So when we get into the metric screens, the calculation to its operation surface is a triangulation reset position of point systems. So we got deposit channels, 3 lines of calculation of 4 settings. Okay. Direct calculation, triangulation, reset position of programs. Now, position of travel lines. Y line centers, high calculation lines of H line rotation center attraction. Direct communication line centers in position location of 2 atoms, high position. Calculation line interference, energetic graph line screens, high position travels, point system line connections, point line cross line centers of strings. Calculation lines, X8000 comes in. Direct signal location scans position of travels of 1, 2, 3, and 4 point systems. Sets travel calculating line centers as center line rotation, center calculation position of point centers. Direct calculation line interference in position locations. Merkaba up in position of travel. Now it's upside down, right? So we equal line the communication, separate the high calculating line center, set position of 0 calculation of Mother Earth, travel calculation of point system of travel. Direct communication line centers, flip the anomalies, travel communications, center line communications, 3 waving line cycles, 4 line tracks, 5 line provision, 6 line calculation, 7 line track lines, and 8 in calculation. Directing wave lines set across the lines 1, 2, 3, 4, and set line condition of travel. Direct calculation line interference into energetic dome lines, a high position of travel and communication. Direct calculation line interference in position of travels. Direct calculation line position location, a new Merkaba, tesseract, and tetrahedron, and say calculation line centers. All operations surface and retriangulation programs, and all line rotation center to moon surface locations of backwards calculation. Done by equation. Okay. Surfacing anomalies and track lines in Merkabas is all division line calculation of streams. Direct lines of signals and line position location. Triangulation and reset position of the program. Crossing line settings, high position operation. Direct calculation of point systems. 1, 2, and 3 line settings. Okay. Direct calculation of 1 cross stream in position of travel. Direct lines of 1 in position of 4 lines of traction. Sets position of 1, 2, and 3 and 4 set location. Direct line, solar sail, and travel line rotation surface and track location. Okay. Now, they not only switch the line centers, we set up 2 lines of 3, 4, and 5 set provision. Directing lines calculation, high center interference. That puts you into your kaleidoscope communication centers, operation surface, and triangulation reset position programs and point systems of security line division locations of measure and position of travel. Done by equation. So this is what the moon is doing in center communications. It's changing all the structure design back to its original prints. Now the prints to its blueprints and the contract line calculation of its valve is recenter and extract its communication setting. How it kaleidoscopes its division, its rotation systems, and all track line conditions back to zero of operation. Okay. All right. So the calculation of structure line to design lines to high position location has a line position of one center of traction. Okay, now directing line communications, the lines crosses line on a 45 angle. Sets communication line systems, a pi to track line connections, 2 pi's line rotation surface. Triangulation reset position of programs. Now this gets really interesting because the point system of track location comes back in the center. Direct calculation lines of security lines and direct signal set location. Now direct line calculation setting, we set the lines of zero gravity, sets communication of portals, wormholes, and track line connections, high centers, high position to its operation, in track line centers, high calculation setting, and position to its calculation. Okay, so in program setting, the calculation of the sun sets lines of communication. This opens all communication line settings back in zero track line centers to its application. Done by equation. Okay. All right, so it's extremely complicated what's going on. But that's basically what it is. So take each pixel stream to a TV receptor line and calculation of the box lines and high position line centers in position of bodies of water. Change the plasma lines into position travel calculation lines to one cell modification stream that directs the signals and set position to its operation set location at 3 triangulation high position programs and molecule structures of design and 4 set location line settings and high position with high centers of appearance of travel calculations. Now, directing lines of communication setting opens up all levels and how you travel through a modification line circle and track location. Directing lines of center lines of 2 operation surface. Sets lines of communication lines. This gets interesting because the sun and the moon is recording its positions of panels and set location to its error at calculation. Directing calculated lines of the sun sets lines of communication in a higher level of frequency and high channel communications of open panel. Directing lines of communication lines centers high position its ground lines. Sets communication astral travels and film projector structures and 3 lines of rotations and travel 45 line center location to graphical screen line position of traction and set location. Done by equation. Okay. Center calculation line stream is ready to understand how the moon beam the line stream line center locations all levels. Water server location setting or travel calculation setting. Moon beam crosses line stream in position of water in set location. Okay. Direct lines calculation of 3 set position of water sequence. Sets lines of the sun. Sun comes in, moon line rotation surface, triangulation and reset position of programs, calculations, color line changes, and direct signals of 2 panel communication centers of travel. Direct calculation line interference. X2000 comes in, formation location is setting. Track calculated line centers, high position of 3 set locations. Now, travel lines, position of 4 lines of measure and position of travel calculations. Direct calculation lines of Merkaba, tesseract communications lines, center line communications, and position location centers, center lines of flux capacitor, and channel communication line interference, right over left and right position of travel. Done by equation. Okay. How's everybody doing so far? Getting all confused? Are we all confused now? So it's all track location in your system and travel position to its operation service. Okay. All right, let's see. Can we mention how the universe, well, it's not the universe, it's your universe locations. Anita, I recommend you going to school and position travel. Okay. You're referring to all levels of plus line channels. There's no existence until you understand the existence of yourself. It's not the universe, it's your universe. Change the correlation setting your track lines to your body for your highest center interference, puts all position of your travels in calculation position of streamlines and set location of travel. All right, Chips. So going. All right. So if you're not activated in stream interference, you're going to put you in outline and rotation center of travel. Okay, looking outside, looking in. Okay, set position travel. Done. All right, 1 line signature, 2 lines of high calculations, film strips over pi, 3 lines rotation, set position of 4 track line connections. Now, position lines, location grid lines, and set position calculation. Direct lines, communication lines is 0, position location of 0, position location of 0, and track location. 3 lines of measure, and line rotation center. Track location of the line center is half-byte communication. Calculation XT1000, calculate XT2000, calculate XT6000 line centers. Triangulation of line centers is a 3-set position of program, set position its operation. Triangulate high positional travel lines. Remember, the moon is going through service line communications of pi and calculations. All right? Now you understand the split anomalies. Track communication lines is always creating the dimensional sail and the solar sail to its track line condition setting. That's where you always see the moon and track location, the highest center of interference, in a half-pipe communication center of travel. See? There's the moon set location, right? That's how you see it through frame communications, right? But what you don't understand is the laser line grids and set position of skynets, sky grid and high position of platforms, in position locations to its pi, and direction of time sequence and 3-set location of travel. That my equation. All right. So getting in position location your attractions, you have to understand the modifiers. Modifiers high position your systems. All calculated modified. So in that track line, this communication setting has a 1 signature panel. Open sacred location of the sun. Sun sets the position location of travel lines. Annual rotation of 0 on calculation 1 centers into new platform in communication setting and position location. Now in track line calculation setting, calculated modified, this is the only time the moon separates the position of travel lines and set position of travel. Calculation of lacing lines and line rotation surface and triangulation. Calculation of 3 lines in position of 4, in position of 5, and set location. Now, directing lines are center lines. Center communication setting. It opens up the platforms and all track location. Okay? Now, the Merkaba sets lines at tesseract. Tesseract sets lines at set location settings of 3 tracks in a 4 and 5 set location of measure. Scales of balance sets platforms. Now, the platform surface its line settings to open sequence line communication of future set location. Okay? Very complicated stuff. That my equation. All right, that's set as a provision. Now, get light signature codes and streamlines and high center interference, you get a modification line cycle. Direct calculation lines. You got a Madden line rotation and triangulation of 5 set locations travels. Travel communication molecule. 1 structure design, 3 line cross lines in high position at all levels, cross line symbols in position of center calculation. Direct line signals, cross the line path. That path rotation centers. Dimensional sail, cross and line stream and interference, and the moon line rotation surface and sun and correlation panels in 1 set location at setting. Okay? Now, triangulation resets, seconds over lines, perimeters over pi, direct line settings, position to 0 in calculation. Okay? Wind cycles of this design, moon surface location system. Now, it's in a million track line setting. That's seconds over minutes over hour calculation, direct line calculation. So in position location, 1 minute is 60 seconds, right? That sets line position to its tone, but you're working with 60 trillion line cycles, set location setting to the moon that triangulates a high position location to its transformer units back in correlation lines of pixel streams and set locations to 1 graphing calculation line system through modification. Okay, triangulation to reset position of moon travels lines of 3 set locations travels, sets lines of communication settings and programs. Done by equation, right? So this is what's going on with your moon setting. As it's going into its reconstructed design of infrastructure location, okay, of its builders and position track lines. Backline and rotation is foundation and position of its air calculation setting into its pioneer. So the track location system is its foundations, is its builders, and its pioneer of its set location of reconstructing its design back in its original print that sets position to your system's locations into its design, a set location, all through structure. Okay? Okay, so how's everybody doing so far? Are we on channel and communication streams and direct signals? All through calculation, modification, and surface. Complicated, right? I know it's a lot to take in, Jibs. All right, so that's what's happening with your moon. So get into your imagination. Your moon is restructuring its design to each box frame of your pixel frame line position travel calculation there to your receptor. Very complicated stuff through the moon, right? But the center communication line is in a kaleidoscope location. And set connections and all line rotation surface. Triangulation, read positions, and programs. Okay? Very complicated stuff, right? Super fast equation. Yes, I know. Well, that's exactly what it is because the moon's surface is so fast in high track locations. All through the line centers, guys. All through line centers. Okay. So there's a reason why it's going through a back force line calculation streamline. Directing line position to your system is triangulation high calculations. 1900 line screens and set position its operation. So every day in line rotation is the same day traction. There's not a 7-day panel. There's only 1 day rotation. The tractive correlation is a force line communication setting that keeps going forward and 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 forward. Right? It goes forward. It never goes back. So what the moon does is it directs and redirects the signals, but it doesn't go back in time. It just goes back and measure. But instead of calculating line interference to go back in time, you have to resurface its track location setting to high calculation to its parallels. The parallel lines its communication setting to its paradigm. The polar shift lines the communication line surface that tracks its location setting of a dimensional and solar sail as set location. Okay, very complicated stuff. Right? But in provision line cycle, it is going back in time. It has to go back in time so it can restructure its design back in its original location setting, which is 0 operation. Thumbs up, and that connections. We're done through equation. That's it. Showing you exactly what's going on in line position in your travels, you have to really understand how to get in your system's location centers. Okay? So we also have a Q&A. Do you want to do that line position? I won't be on right away because I have to do the set position location of Space Discoveries 3, Episode 3. All right? But you're welcome to, Hemno can open up the portal if you guys want to communicate that line centers interference, checking and see if you guys are on through modifications and track locations, right? But in that modification line interference, it's in the atrium on AB line center, okay? Lower graph calculation line centers in the conference room and set position travels, okay? Adios. Doo-doo.